Welcome to the Numerologist podcast, where we bring you a very special guest every single week to help guide you on your spiritual journey, live with abundance, and inspire your soul.
Hi Numerologist fans, and welcome to the Numerologist podcast. I'm Rose, your host, and I'm delighted that you've joined me today. Now, today's guest is a tarot reader and psychic on a mission to help people both on YouTube and with her one-on-one readings. Chandni Patel runs the Moonlight Guidance YouTube channel, where she creates videos of monthly tarot readings and forecasts, twin flame readings, and weekly pick-a-card readings too. Chandni loves to create and recently opened the Moonlight Tarot store on Etsy. Now, please join me in welcoming Chandni to the podcast. Hi Chandni, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, how are you?
I'm really well, thank you. Thanks so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
No worries at all. Now, we've been following your tarot channel for a little while now. But for the people who don't necessarily know who you are, could you just explain who you are and what you do?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Chandni, which means moonlight, and my channel is Moonlight Guidance. I'm a tarot reader on YouTube, where I post pick-a-card readings, monthly tarot zodiac sign readings, subliminal music to manifest the life of your dreams, and also tarot and oracle card reviews. So I also do private readings. I have an Etsy store with intention items, and they're all blessed and saged. And I love creativity. I love astrology. I love spirituality. And that is just my go-to place where I try and share that with as many people as possible. So through YouTube, through Etsy, and so those are a few of the big things.
Excellent. Now, I'm always interested to hear how people came to sort of the life that they're in right now, and especially when it's related to spirituality and that kind of thing. So how did you sort of get on this path? How did you find your love for tarot and then sort of want to bring it to the world in this way?
Yeah, it's a long story.
We've got time.
Oh, great. So as a child, I was super spiritual. Actually had religious parents, and I mean, they're still religious now even. Not extremely strict, but their beliefs, I believe, are really beautiful. And they're not like forcing or anything like that. And I always thought it was cool. And I would always see how people in my family would consult an astrologer for things like, it's a good time, when is it a good time to get married, or when is it a good time for a marriage, or the date of a wedding or a baby shower, if marriage possibility is favorable. So usually they match two people's kundlis, which are known as, of course, birth charts, to see if they can make a long-term pair. So this is stuff that I really grew up surrounded by as a child. When it's the best time to start a business, I was always around it, and from a very, very young age. So I mean, I really grew up being devoted to it as well. And I chose to, even growing up in the UK, I will say, when I went to school, like, none of my friends, nobody around me really believed in this, but I really felt quite devoted to it because I always felt like I was seeing certain signs. I always felt like my prayers were somehow being answered, even through very difficult times. And I became very devoted to the goddess of prosperity and success, who is known as Lakshmi Ma, and also Ganesha, who is the god of protection and mover of obstacles. So the main way I really got into spirituality was through that. And specifically with tarot, it's a bit of a different journey. It was more through hardship, and it was more through difficult times in career, and specifically in relationships as well. So even though spirituality really helped me get through some of those struggles, it was tarot that really allowed me to get into the main aspect of how I could really manifest and remove certain things that were sort of blocking me, or certain obstacles that were going to come up. So the main way for that really was, I actually have a degree in fashion, and I loved it, but for sure it was very materialistic. Getting a job was very, very hard. And I do believe through hard work, I manifested a lot of goodness, especially, awards that I won, etc. But I also found that once I graduated, I had just applied for so many jobs, and I had really failed at that. Honestly, it was a very difficult time. And I actually was on a TV show in the UK, which was called The Job Interview, and I actually won my job on there. It was my first job I got. And to think, out of all the hundreds of job applications I put in, and to have then got my job on national television, where I was up against other people, was something that I didn't realize was actually something so much bigger, part of the picture in terms of law of attraction, which, at that time I didn't honestly realize to that extent. I moved for that job. It was a toxic work environment, living alone, heartbreak with a relationship. So that is actually how I discovered tarot. One night I asked a psychic advisor, and everything she said happened over the course of a few months in my life. I moved jobs again. The guy I was seeing came back, but she also taught me so many ways in which I could use my power to manifest my dream life and my spiritual gifts. I then bought my first tarot deck and practiced until I felt comfortable to take it online. And I will say that actually fashion helped me a lot because of YouTube. It's definitely something that helps with table arrangements and admin and decoration for videos, and the more aesthetic part of it, which you see online, which is important because people will click on videos, but also color combinations for the bracelets and things that I make on my Etsy store. So I actually do feel that everything helped me to get up until this point, and I don't believe that anything was there to specifically waste my time. Everything was very important. I had a guru, and I still have that guru, who is constantly educating me on astrology and tarot, as we speak. So it's a very long story, but yeah, that is pretty much how I got into spirituality, which then led into tarot as well.
I love that. And one thing that you said to me that stuck out just there was about your parents being religious, but you were still around the spirituality side of things. And I think a lot of people who do grow up in religious households have a bit of a push-pull thing there, especially if their families are strict. So it seems like you had sort of the best of both worlds there. And we did actually get a question from an audience member who asked, do you have any advice for newcomers or beginners who have strict parents? Strict religious parents, I mean by that.
Oh, okay, yeah. Yeah, I mean, if they're strict on religion and tarot, or even spirituality, then it's not going to be an easy road. But I guess one must follow their heart and be diplomatic with the family too, and avoid any conflict with the family. I think that's also, quite natural in that sense. As I mentioned, I have religious parents, but they were very understanding and very supportive. I know of many of my viewers that say they don't really want their parents to know that they're watching these readings or purchasing anything that specifically has tarot related to it. I will come from the personal standpoint of I studied fashion, and when I graduated, people in my own family, would mock my parents and say, oh, she isn't a doctor, she's not an engineer or a lawyer. And, it's very common in the culture that I come from where that is not accepted, yet something like astrology, tarot is a little bit more accepted because of, I guess, religion and spirituality, which runs quite strong throughout my family, which I think is quite interesting. But basically, I just think that it's important to follow your calling, and that is staying true to you. And that's a decision for you to make. And I think that's really important, is that it's really about following the heart. And yeah, that's the best thing I can say.
Absolutely. It's great advice. Now, in terms of you starting your YouTube channel, how long were you reading tarot and learning it before you felt confident enough to start your channel?
So I believe it was 2 years ago, which honestly doesn't sound like a lot. It was a lot of dedication every single day to learn, and that was the main thing, is that it was mind, body and soul. So I really started in the beginning of 2018 on my channel, but then it was 2 years prior to that I actually started picking up, practicing, and really started to nail down things like time frames, starting to connect it to astrology and different transits that were happening. So it was a process beforehand, and 2 years may not sound like a lot, but I think when you do it every single day, it's definitely something that is just, very consistent. So yeah, it was 2 years. I had 2 decks, and for the longest time, it's crazy because now, you know, after 2 years of reading on my channel, and I'd say in the grand scheme of things, it's been sort of 4 years. I have now over 200 decks, which is kind of crazy to say, and almost 200,000, well, over 200,000 subscribers, which is insane. So I really do think that consistency made the biggest difference, even if it was just a little bit every day. But yeah, that is essentially, yeah, it's crazy actually to think about now, because I don't think about how it all started.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's nice to think to go back to where it all began and just see where you are now in comparison. And it's funny you mentioned that you have over 200 decks, because that's what I was going to ask you about that as well. So you started off with 2 decks and now you've got over 200. How do you go about choosing a deck? Is it just one that you like, or do you feel a specific connection to it? How does it work?
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is something that I get asked a lot as well. You know, when I first started, I would look at reviews. So I would go for the traditional tarot, and then I'd branch into things that I really enjoyed. Like I love the color gold, so that always draws me in a lot. It's to, you know, prosperity and success. So I love that color so much. There are certain illustrations that I really like. There are certain card decks that I'm really drawn to in terms of colors and illustrations that I just think like, wow, you know, I really like that. I, you know, love Lord Ganesha and a lot of the Hindu goddesses and gods, and also from lots of other different cultures and religions as well. So to me, you know, a deck like the Keepers of the Light is very special as well. So it's really about what personally connects to me, but I will be very, very honest, and I will say I do get sent a lot of decks as well. So that is one of the reasons why the card collection has grown so much, just because I'm so lucky that, you know, companies want to send me their products to review as well. So I'll just be very, very honest with that.
No, that's perfect. Yeah, no, that makes sense as well. So when you're actually about to do a reading, how do you pick the deck from your mass of decks? Like, how do you go about thinking, okay, well, this time I'm going to use this? Again, is it something you're drawn to, or, you know, how does it work?
Yeah, so I will say that I don't know, I change them out quite a lot in terms of like, okay, so for this month, for the love readings, I'm going to use Rider-Waite, but then you know, next month it may not be the same deck. It's really what I am drawn to and what I feel energetically. I will study transits and a lot of astrology for the month prior to doing the readings, and so when I'm doing that, I will usually look at all of the decks that I have and see which ones I'm gravitating towards in regards to the research that I've also done with astrology, and then also trying to connect that to tarot, because a lot of the readings I do connect to astrology. So to me, that is essentially how I do it. It's literally just me sitting there and thinking, okay, who's speaking to me?
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of your readings are on, you know, love and soulmates and twin flames and those kinds of things. Do you find that your audience really resonates with that? And do you know why?
I think people are just really curious about their love lives. I believe in that, because that's how I was. And it's just something that's so fascinating, because with that, I think people always want to search for answers. People want to have love, or they want to receive love, or they really want to expand that part of their life. And it can be a really tricky part for so many people. And I think that's the thing, is that it's almost like they want to also learn about spirituality and how that also affects relationships as well. So I think a huge part of it is that people do really want to improve that aspect of their life, and they're very curious, or at least want to mend things in those areas, but also they just want to learn as well. And I think that's one of the big things, is that I often get a lot of people that say like, wow, you know, I didn't know this before, but now it makes so much sense. So I think a lot of it is also learning and growing, and them also being able to understand themselves through the readings as well.
So for those people who perhaps haven't had a reading or seen a reading that's sort of love focused, what kind of things can they expect to hear? Because obviously you can't say your lover's going to come back to you tomorrow. So what is the kind of thing that they would hear in a reading?
I mean, a lot of the time it is based on self-love. A lot of the time with spiritual connections, especially twin flames and soulmates, a lot of it is really to do with energy. And I'll be very honest, I really do believe that twin flames and soulmates can feel each other's energies. And so it really does depend. If you're pining over them 24/7, They do feel that, and a lot of the times that's why there seems to be a lot of shifts and a lot of changes where one person can step back and the other one feels like they're sort of chasing the other person. But then the minute someone puts their energy back into themselves, they'll find that the connection starts to balance out. And this is something that happens a lot with these connections. So a lot of it is focused on really building a good life for yourself as well. And a lot of it is also built with astrology and seeing when are the more favorable times where you could meet someone, or when are the more favorable times when something might go wrong. And it's about perhaps being diplomatic during that time as well. It can really help. So essentially with the readings, it will give you an idea as to what can happen in the month. I mean, they're all general readings. They will resonate with some people and they won't for others. But for a lot of people, it's really about them trying to sort of navigate around the month, trying to find out, you know, when the best time is for certain things, what are the, you know, possibilities of certain things happening in certain percentages. So a lot of it is really based on that, but every reading does differ in that sense, and it can be different for every sign essentially.
Yeah, and it's like that age-old adage, you know, knowledge is power. So you're kind of equipping people with the tools that they need to do what they need to do in their relationships, right?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is also having power within yourself, because that's so important in any kind of connection, is taking back the power, you know, doing what's right for you as well, and not just always relying on somebody else to give you that validation. And I think by expressing that in readings as well, hopefully it gives more motivation for people to not put their life on hold, but instead to realize that, you know, there's lots of different opportunities and there's lots of different ways to navigate through a month or even a year, and the possibilities, you know, can be endless.
Absolutely. Now, I just wanted to talk about your Etsy shop, because you have got this Etsy shop, Moonlight Tarot Store, and it's spiritual charged intention bracelets. So can you tell me how that came about?
I started my channel and I always realized that whenever I'd go to Indian weddings or even a temple in India, they would always tie these threads. I guess they're like sacred threads. They would always tie those threads on wrists. And even when I would go to a wedding, like I went to my cousin's wedding, we would also, women would have them tied around their hands, and men also have them tied around their hands as well. And I just thought that it was such a powerful thing. And my mum actually brought this up to me, and she said, you know, I think that this could be amazing. You know, you can use spirituality to really help people and those that connect to your channel as well and your energy. And that's essentially how it started. So we started with, I think, 3 or 4 different variations, and they're essentially just ties with beads on them, which are color coordinated, and they have different energies tied to them for different areas of life, be it, you know, protection or even boosting love or health and happiness, boosting chakras. And yeah, they're to be tied on, and there's loads of other items on there as well, but essentially, you know, that is the main core, is that everything on my Etsy store is blessed, so it's saged and it's meditated with, and that's again a core part of my practice as well. So there's bracelets, necklaces, crystals, embroidered cards which you can put under your pillow and your wallet or your purse, and a lot of people have seen results with them, and that's essentially why I still continue as well, is just to be able to see how so many people have seen results. But it's just so motivating for me to know that there are people that are watching my readings, but also that they have actual items that I have really put so much energy into as well. I think that's the bit that just really warms my heart so much, because it's a physical sort of item that they can connect with, which is completely, you know, it's handmade.
Absolutely, and they are some beautiful designs. I'll link your Etsy store in the show notes for this podcast, so our listeners can actually go through and have a look too, and purchase themselves an intention bracelet, because they're very, very beautiful. And I really love how much time and energy and love you put into these, because you don't really find that with a lot of products out there. They're just, you know, sometimes mass made, and you don't know the backstory to them. So it's really, really nice to hear that you work so hard on them, and you actually each individual piece is specially blessed and all that kind of thing. So that's really nice. So I'm gonna ask some questions now that came directly from our audience and your audience as well, because we had quite a range of different questions. So I'll just jump straight into them. The first one was, how do you know you are being divinely guided? And other than symbols and repeated numbers, could you describe that feeling?
Yeah, I think a lot of this is the inner voice. That's the thing, is that, I mean, there's a lot of people that, you know, as you mentioned, repeating numbers and that, it's a whole other world. But I think it's the belief, right? Because there are a lot of people that see different signs, synchronicities, but they don't believe in it. So a lot of this, I really do feel, is connecting with your deeper voice, and it's also the voice of the divine in many circumstances, and gathering experience about it, making you more sure on the results always. So I think part of this is also when you're looking for an answer, and it's about seeing what is presented to us. For example, is it something in the form of a sentence that we read that could resonate to the answer we're looking for? Is it with dreams, certain, you know, feelings that you get as well? Maybe you get like an aha moment. So I really do feel that in terms of being divinely guided, it is also about having that belief and just really keeping your third eye also open, and trying to, I guess the biggest thing here is that when you know, but I do feel that it's about being open spiritually as well, and not trying to deny that in any way, shape or form.
Yeah, I think you're so right there about being sort of open for it and open to it. I'll tell you a bit of a personal story. I've been working for Numerologist for 2 years, talking to my family about things, and, you know, all repeating numbers and all those kinds of things. So a few weeks ago, my brother finally says to me, "Oh, I keep seeing all, you know, repeating sevens and this, that, and the other," and I said, "Yeah, well, numerology, da da da," and he's like, "Yeah, whatever." Then a few days go by, he sends me a few blogs that he's like, "Read what this says. This is happening to me right now." I said to him, "This is literally a blog that I have edited." I'm like, "I've been telling you about this for years." So then I send him the link to get a numerology reading, and he is a believer and being guided by it now. But so it's really funny because it's something that until you're ready to take on board, you're not ready.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
And one thing you mentioned there was having your third eye open. What does that look like? How do we do that?
I mean, I think that a lot of it is also just really, personally, I do it through meditation. So that's the way I do it. I know other people do it by visually trying to imagine that there is a third eye. So it's it's not in the middle of your forehead, but it's just a little bit down, and it's sort of between the brows, but a little bit higher. I'm trying to explain it in this way, but essentially it's about also visualizing it, but also I think meditation really helps to open up the third eye as well. So yeah, I really do think that the third eye is one of the keys in order to really try and dive deeper into what you can see, and also being divinely guided, because there are a lot of things you can see when your third eye is open, rather than, of course, when it's closed.
Absolutely. Now, the next question is about living a spiritual life. So being spiritual and intuitive, are there certain ways you've found to be more beneficial to keep your energy pure and your connection strong with source?
Oh, absolutely. I do prayer beads every single day. I chant mantras with it for different areas of my life, or if there are some retrogrades that are really quite intense. For example, we had the Mercury retrograde in Cancer, and that was pretty intense. So I use certain mantras with that. I'll do at least one meditation every single day. And I also do cleansing for clients in the mornings, and also cleansing intention items for my store, my Etsy store. And a lot of this really helps me to also regain energy. I always feel like meditation really gives me energy, especially then when I have to do private readings and also channel readings for my YouTube channel. So a lot of that actually gives me a ton of energy. And I know it sounds like a lot, but I get a lot of energy in this. And I also try and eat healthy to keep my energy up as well. And because I'm sitting a lot, and then I try different exercises, dance and sacred gymnastics, which the divine really also connects to as well. So I try and do as much as I can to keep my energy up, and to essentially do enough to also be able to manage the things that I do by myself as well.
Mm-hmm. Did you say sacred gymnastics?
Yes, it is
Wow,
a
what is that?
Well, I follow some tutorials online where essentially it is, I mean, I don't want to get the terminology wrong, but it's kind of between gymnastics and also between yoga. So it really helps with flexibility, but it's also very spiritual in a sense as well. Like yoga is very spiritual, but it's also based really on flexibility as well, and breathing and exercises. So there's a lot of different tutorials online, but yeah, I'm probably not the best at explaining it, but it's sort of like a mix between the two, which I think is really quite interesting. And also it combines, you can listen to different sacred music as well whilst you're doing it too. So yeah, I'm not the best at explaining it, but there's a lot of information online.
No, it's really interesting actually. I've never heard of it before, which is why I asked. So it's really, really interesting to hear. What other questions have we got? Let's have a look. So this question is, how can I become closer connected to the universe? And this actually might be quite similar to the last one, but I'll ask it anyway. How can I become closer connected to the universe? Sometimes I really struggle with trusting the divine. Like I feel I have to control everything when sometimes you just have to let things be.
I think part of it is just trying to loosen the grip. Sometimes we want to have control over everything, so we have this closed fist, like we need to control things. I think that does actually a little bit more harm. So just loosening the grip of the hand and just letting things flow. And it can be hard sometimes to trust the universe and not know which direction the universe is going to take us in. But part of it really is just trusting the universe, knowing that what is meant for us will never pass us by in our lifetime. And it can feel so overwhelming and so challenging in that moment to do that. But I think sometimes when we try and hold on to things and we try and do things in our own way, it can hurt us a lot more. And it can also make us do things inevitably that we might even regret. So I really do feel that trusting the universe, practicing law of attraction as well, because it will keep you closer to your goals and your dreams. Also, really meditation. I am a huge advocate for meditation. I really do feel that it's incredible. It helps to ground and center our energy, and also it can give energy as well. And through time, people can see things in their meditations as well, depending on, of course, their abilities and how they also feel. And so I think it's really a combination, but part of it really is just surrendering to the universe and knowing that what's meant for you will be, but also that you can use the law of attraction as well.
Yeah, so let's talk about the law of attraction, because you mentioned it in the beginning of the podcast when we were talking about sort of manifesting the job that you got on TV. So can you explain a bit about how you use the law of attraction?
I personally just think that all of our thoughts, even thoughts throughout the day, they are being recorded by the Akashic records, and the universe is always noting every single thing we do. So I always felt this also when I was at uni, that I need to just do the best that I can. I need to work hard. Hard work will be recognized, and if it doesn't, then something better will essentially come along. And that's exactly what happened. So when I graduated, I was not getting any kind of job whatsoever. And it's kind of crazy because one of the biggest companies that I applied for was actually the job that because I got the job on TV, that was the job. But then I was actually headhunted by a company that I had applied for after uni, and they kept rejecting me over and over and over again, but they had my information saved on their database. And so they had come to me after. And I remember whilst I was at this job that I got on TV, which was not a great job, I just remember sitting there and really just saying, like, I really, I work hard, I do so much, I have, I've won awards, I'm really good at what I do, but I'm not fulfilled in this. And I got it after such a long time. Am I being ungrateful? Like, what is this all about? And then literally the day after, I was walking home from my job and I got this email, which just so happened to be from the company that had originally rejected me, and they wanted me. And I really do believe that it's our belief and it's us trusting that whatever will happen will happen. And so for me, the law of attraction is about my thoughts. It's about me sitting by myself and just I wouldn't say it's wishing. I think it's, well, I would say it's wishing, but it's more so a balance between also how much consistency we put into things, because just trying to say things and wanting things alone is not going to get us what we want. We definitely have to work hard in retrospect alongside that. And I think it's a real combination of continuously, consistently working hard whilst trying to manifest what we truly want. And I think that the universe really deals with that in a way where, oh, they will try and do as much as they can. So for me, that is essentially how it worked. And then that's also how I try and use it to the absolute best of my ability.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And that's a great story, isn't it, about being headhunted after, you know, they've rejected you multiple times.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'll just ask a couple more questions, and then we'll end. There's a few questions that have come up about deciphering between the ego and your own like intuition and that kind of thing. How do you distinguish between those two, and what helped you learn to trust and recognize your intuition and decipher between the ego?
Yeah, so I really feel that personally for me, it's more so about listening to the deeper soul rather than the ego, because or any other kind of impulsive energy from the shadow self. It's tricky because sometimes you can be led into essentially listening to your ego and not the divine voice. So personally for me, it's really about listening to the divine voice. It's a little bit like the heart and the mind. Sometimes our heart just knows what's right, but then our mind will send us into overdrive. It can create a lot more added anxiety, stress, just so much more that can essentially make us take other actions that we may not feel are right later on down the line. So I definitely feel like it's listening to the divine voice. And I feel like the best way to connect to that is through being calm. So, for example, making decisions in anger can be things that we regret later on down the line, or especially when we're super stressed, making certain decisions, we might not get it right, or we might do the wrong thing, for example. So really, I think a lot of this is also just being as calm as possible, taking a bit of time to really think things through as well, and listening to the divine voice, which eventually I really do feel comes out when you just really surrender to it.
Mm-hmm. That's great advice. Now, the last question I'm going to ask you is about twin flames and relationships, because as we know, people are very interested in twin flame relationships. One of the questions that you got on your channel was, have you been in a twin flame relationship? And we don't need to go into the specifics of that. But one question that I would really like to ask about it was, how did you know? And when did you know that you were in a twin flame relationship? Just so we can help other people recognize that.
Yeah, so one of the big characteristics is that it can be quite push and pull, but it also just has this real strong intensity like you've met before. So for me personally, it was just this real strong intensity like you've met this person before. So when you start talking to them, conversations seem never ending. It seems like you just know everything about this person. So then when they start speaking and telling you all these things, it just makes sense. And it's this sort of realization. And I think with time, you would definitely know that it's a twin flame connection, mainly because then you can separate infatuation, you can separate other aspects from it as well, lust and things like that. You can really separate it to try and understand exactly what it is. Also with twin flame connections, especially the one that I had, really very much so was about also some characteristics as well about the person. They can very much so be someone that's quite interested, and then the connection can sort of become quite mirroring. So you end up mirroring each other's thoughts and actions. Things can become a little bit more runner chaser kind of a vibe. Not always, but a lot of the time. And it depends on past lives as well, because twin flames oftentimes meet in past lives and then they come back into other lifetimes as well. And not everybody meets their twin flame, but twin flames can also look very similar as well. They can have certain characteristics. When you look into their eyes, it's almost like you're seeing a deeper part of their soul. And oftentimes with twin flame connections, what happens, I found from personal experience, is that there's this energy where you meet this person and you essentially can, the two people can understand what they need to learn and grow from. So for example, if there are, two twin flames, is that through experience and getting to know each other, one of the twin flames can learn, okay, I should be a little bit more open, a bit more responsive. I need to do this, I need to do that. I need to learn and grow and, find out so much more about myself. And so essentially twin flames also really push each other for maximum growth as well. And this tends to happen in parallel. And oftentimes what can happen is that, if a twin flame is not ready, they can get overwhelmed and it can become too intense, and then happens the runner-chaser dynamic. But oftentimes they can reconcile, and it really just depends on the nature of the twin flame connection, but it can be very, very intense. And for a lot of connections, it can be very powerful as well. It can be life-changing. A lot of amazing lessons can be learned, or a lot of growth can also happen as well. That's essentially the long-winded side of things.
But I think you actually summed it up beautifully. I know twin flames and soulmate. It can be a lot of information, and it can be a very long-winded subject. So I think it was a great summary there. So hopefully, if our numerologist community are looking for information about their relationship and what kind of relationship they're in, that will resonate with some of them. All right, Chandni, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today. I've really enjoyed our conversation. And for our numerologist community, you can head to Moonlight Guidance on YouTube, and I'll also put a link to that in the show notes. And also Chandni's Etsy store will be in the show notes too. Thanks again, Chandni.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.
Hey Numerologist community, I hope you really enjoyed this podcast on Numerologist's YouTube channel. You can head to the link in the description if you want to listen to this on iTunes or Google Podcasts, and you can subscribe there too. If you love this video and want to see more, make sure you subscribe to our channel as well.